to work out why we do what we do. BBC World Service podcasts are supported by advertising.
Thank you for downloading from the BBC. For details of our complete range of podcasts and our terms of use, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.
You're listening to The Y Factor on the BBC World Service. I'm Asma Mir. This week, stories written by fans about books, TV shows and films that they love.
In an endless black moment, one by one, Harry saw his friends succumb to the maleficence of Lord Voldemort.
Fanfiction, or as they call it, fanfic.
The power of that explosion, half Patronus, half black magic, was inescapable.
I was expecting a more mature story. I think there was so many stereotypes. You don't make a connection with a character you don't believe in.
Chilean fanfic author Francisca Solar was so disappointed by the fifth instalment of Harry Potter, The Order of the Phoenix, she wrote her own sequel, The Decline of the High Elves.
Although it didn't hit them directly, the wave of power also reached Harry and Stella, with enough force to knock them off balance and hurl them violently against the wet ground.
I would never ever thought about rewriting an author's work. I just want to share my thoughts about what is coming next. My first thought was to write a sixth book, not to rewrite the fifth.
What reaction did you get?
It was crazy. I mean, even today, it's been 13 years since I published it, and it's still amazing. I receive at least one email every day about it. It's surreal, because even today, I don't know. I really don't have a clue why it was so successful. There are thousands of fanfic writers out there. I was just one of them.
Harry tried to get up. His ear was bleeding. The high-pitched buzz of the spell must have pierced his eardrum. But he was alive. He readjusted his glasses and focused. There were bodies everywhere.
Fandom's like being in a band, where you don't just write, but you write for others, and they write for you, and you talk about stories, and you kind of hang out. It's a social activity. But it's a social activity about words instead of about music.
Francesca Coppa is Professor of English and Film Studies at Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania.
From one definition, you can claim the whole history of literature is the history of fan fiction. Arguably, the Aeneid is Homer fan fiction. Certainly the whole Arthurian universe is fan fiction, right? Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern is Shakespeare fan fiction. But what people tend to mean when they talk about modern fan fiction is fan fiction written by amateurs about the mass media. And I would probably date it from Sherlock Holmes, who was a character who appeared in serialized mass media form, except the mass media was the magazine. And people almost immediately had a kind of modern fanish response about Sherlock Holmes and started writing stories about Sherlock Holmes, not just the millions of professional stories and incarnations of Holmes, but a whole amateur world of Sherlock Holmes, where Sherlock Holmes becomes the site of a game that we're all playing. In fact, Holmesians call it the great game of kind of reading and writing Holmes in community.
If you're new to fan fiction, there's a bewildering amount of terminology and acronyms to get your head around. For example, PWP.
PWP is plot what plot. So a PWP might be a missing scene where it doesn't have a lot of plot, but is giving a kind of supplemental scene that you wished was in the movie or wished was in the book and isn't there. A PWP tends to be kind of a sexy scene or maybe a romantic scene that didn't happen.
Extract from the storybook Vengers, Little Red Iron Man by Alfera, a PWP between Iron Man and Captain America based on Marvel's The Avengers.
Why, Steve, it seems you're happy to see me, Tony says with a lecherous grin, and Steve turns even redder. The tale just keeps going faster and faster, though, and Tony can see Steve's happy in more ways than one. This universe is turning out to be a top 10 rather than a bottom 10. Tony keeps a predatory smile on his face and looks coquettishly through his lashes-up at Cap.
Then there's Mary Sue.
To talk about Mary Sue, you have to talk about the fact that fan fiction is mostly written by women. And I think that that is because women have been not given enough of a voice in doing the big commercial blockbuster stories that are our folk culture. The common culture that we have is, the Marvel universe and the Star Wars universe. It's the thing that excites us and brings us together. And women have been disproportionately represented in the making of those stories. And so women write fan fiction. Now, knowing that, a Mary Sue is considered to be a kind of self-insert character where the female writer sort of writes herself into the story in some way, gets to go on the adventures of Star Wars or gets to be on the bridge of the Enterprise. And that's why it's called a Mary Sue, the sense that it's a female authorial self-insert.
Just when the headmaster finished his speech, the double doors were magically flung open and a girl walked in. All the boys' jaws hit the floor. Some even passed out from the sheer beauty that was shining from her, while the girls were staring at her jealously. Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy were drooling.
How Mary Sue Saved the World by the Handsome Twin, based on J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series.
Pat Roach is a 69-year-old fanfic author who is particularly obsessed by an American TV series.
I got into Bonanza when it first became on television, when I was in a children's home, and I became completely besotted with Little Joe Cartwright.
For the uninitiated, Bonanza was a popular Western that was on TV in the 60s and early 70s about the Cartwright family who lived on their ranch, the Ponderosa.
It's very considerate of you to drive me, Mr. Cartwright.
Well, most people hereabouts just call me Little Joe.
Little Joe? Well, you're not that small.
I was not that bad. It's my brother Horst is that big.
Yes, he is.
And I changed my whole lifestyle, and I wasn't in a children's home anymore. I lived on the Ponderosa. I lived in a little fantasy world of my own.
What was it, do you think, about Bonanza that appealed to you so much?
Well, I think it was because I was the child of a broken marriage, and Bonanza came across with a pa, a loving, caring father. Not that mine wasn't, but one minute we were at home, the next minute we were in a children's home, and we never saw our father again. But Pa was there every week, Pa Cartwright, and I suddenly had two brothers, and I had this gorgeous teenage boy. Little Joe was I idolised him. He was everything that I thought a man should be, a boy should be. He was my first boyfriend.
Fast forward then all these years and you end up writing fan fiction about Bonanza. How did that happen?
Yeah, that happened the year after my mother died, and I went into a bit of a despondency. Couldn't sleep at night, surfed the internet, and I found this site, this Bonanza site, and I thought, I remembered Bonanza and how I felt so cosy and loved and cared for. Not that I wasn't. My husband and my family were all there for me, but it was me, the inner me. I joined the site. I read fanfic on the site. I'd never heard of fanfic before, but I became a member and started writing, and that was it. Been writing ever since.
Who do you mainly write about then? I'm guessing it might be Joe.
Yes, it is mainly Joe. Getting into trouble, getting hurt, getting rescued.
And going on dates?
Oh, yeah. But I don't like to write too much about that because I don't want him out with anyone else but me. So, and I can put myself in that situation. Stretching even lower to caress the sweaty neck of my equine saviour, I was completely taken by surprise. Cooch slithered, twisting to a dead stop. Unseated, I catapulted from the saddle. Now I really was flying through the air. I remember thinking, this is going to hurt.
There are two ways that authors can react to fan fiction. Some embrace it and are flattered by people embellishing their own work. Others are mortally offended and want to take legal action. Laurel K. Hamilton is a published American fantasy and romance writer. She's best known for her Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series.
You can have fan fiction in my work. You can have fun with it as long as you don't try to make money from it. But you can't tell me about it. I cannot know you're doing fan fiction. And everybody goes, oh, why? Why? Because it damages my copyright. People don't seem to understand that what I do for a living actually puts food on my table for my family and is what's putting my daughter through college. So my copyright, my ability to control what is written about my characters in my world is what I do. Here in the United States, in 1992, Marion Zimmer Bradley, who was one of the grand dames of fantasy literature, somebody sent her a fanzine. And she read it because they wanted her to read it. Unfortunately, it was too close, by some accounts, too close to the novel she herself was writing with her own characters in her own world. And she ended up not being able, once the lawyers got involved, to finish and publish a novel that she herself had written about her own characters in her own world. And she had actually offered a small amount of money to the person and just said, just sign off on this. I'm already writing the book. And they said no. They wanted more money. They wanted a byline. And it ended up she lost the ability to publish that novel. So it's sort of a cautionary tale. And that is one of the reasons that I have always avoided it, and my agent has always told me to avoid it. You can write fan fiction in my world, and I love the fact that people love my characters so much. I really do. But don't tell me about it.
Fanfic academic Francesca Coppa takes a different view.
If you have enough fans that you have fan fiction written about you, you are very successful. There's not a shred of proof that fan fiction has ever hurt a creative author who is trying to make money. In fact, the presence of fan fiction is almost always an assurance that you are going to be very, very rich, because it is your fans promoting your work, loving your work, discussing your work in community. And if you think the fans writing fan fiction are not going to buy the next installment of what you put out, you're misunderstanding the phenomenon.
In fact, some fanfic writers do themselves become professional writers, like Francisca Solar, the Harry Potter fan fiction author we heard from earlier.
Suddenly, my name was everywhere on the internet, on forums and blogs and newspapers. Everyone was talking about me in very different languages, which was really amazing. Just one day, I received a call from Penguin Random House telling me that they read my fan fiction, that they loved it, and they wanted me to start writing my own novels.
Wow.
And I was 22. I was at the university. I mean, I was not even, finished my my studies. I have never published before. I was just a fanfic writer. And I was shocked because I never thought that my fanfic was going to be that successful. I was doing that just for the love, the passion. I didn't want glory. I didn't want fame. I didn't want money, of course. It was a great, really great opportunity, and so I took it.
How far do you push the boundaries? Because Bonanza is set in a particular period in a particular place. So how much can you push things?
We have got parameters to stay in, and we have to keep the legend of the boys, of the Cartwrights, as sweet and smooth and pure as we can. You don't write about rape or incest. You can put in same partner sex if you want, but not between the Cartwrights.
So how much are you writing then? Do you write every day?
Yes.
Gosh. And how much do you write in a day?
I can write anything up to 3,000 words a day, 5,000 words a day. And I always write in pen. I've got A4 pads. I double space my writing so that I can correct. And I would say over the last 4 years, I must have at least 50 pads, 400 sheets in a pad, all full.
Wow. The most famous example of a fanfic author making the leap from amateur to professional is E.L. James, whose 50 Shades of Grey started out as fanfiction of the vampire-themed Twilight series. But for most fanfic writers, the goal isn't a professional career. It's the opportunity to play with much-loved characters in a uniquely creative world with very few limits. What about OTP?
Oh, and OTP is your one true pairing. And that might be because in a lot of these mass media stories, there are often big teams of people, and people ship, which is another term for short for relationship. But people often sort of want to see different couples get together. In Harry Potter, some people wanted to see Harry Potter get together with Hermione, and some people wanted to see Harry get together with Ginny, and some people wanted to see Harry get together with Draco, and some people wanted to see Harry get together with Snape.
Extract of Houseproud by Astolat, one you might enjoy if Harry Draco is your OTP in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter.
Harry stepped in to meet Draco as he turned back, and they kissed and kissed again, moving deeper into each other's arms and passing it between them, kissing until they lost their breath and had to stop to chase it down like dancing. They were grinning at each other helplessly, breathing hard, and then there was a faint rumbling. The grand staircase shifted towards them a bit, widening invitingly.
There's a genre called MPreg, which stands for male pregnancy. And so the question of, like, how might Captain Kirk handle having become pregnant in the second year of his 5-year mission, which sounds like it might be a kind of bizarre premise, except it's something that women think about a lot. I wake up every day and think about how am I going to be a hero and still be a good mom to my kid. But you know what? Captain Kirk never had to face that problem in fiction. And it's not what he would do as a man. It's what he would do as the captain of the Enterprise. Do you see the distinction? How does he do his job?
Extract from Star Trek Baby Blue by I Beg to Dream and Differ.
Jim sat at Spock's side, a goofy smile on his face, while Dr. McCoy spoke with the Vulcan healer who had delivered the baby in the corner. The Enterprise was orbiting New Vulcan, and most, if not all, of the crew were waiting to hear if the baby had been born healthy, and whether it was a boy or a girl. "He's perfect," Jim breathed reverently, and Spock felt his lips twitch upward.
Is it an obsession?
Yes, I think it is. But it's a nice obsession.
Well, I was going to say...
And I'm not harming anyone.
Yeah, healthy or unhealthy?
Oh, I think it's healthy. It's, I'm pushing 70. It keeps my brain active. Because of my disruptive childhood, my schoolwork could have been better. So I'm self-teaching online, getting my help with my grammar and my punctuation. And also on the site, people help. There are much more educated people than I writing, and some very fine writers. And they all help. We all help each other. It's a really cosy place to be.
Fandom is like what the world would look like if all those Hollywood movies and great BBC TV shows and HBO things were written by women. And when you spent a little time in an all-female art world, it's really addictive and fun. It's like the whole world was written for you.
There are dozens of different podcasts now available from the BBC, including news, documentaries, science, business, arts and sport. For details of them all, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.